It appears we have a situation in the news today where they're falling over themselves, saying that at long last they've cured the problem coming across the channel. I do, of course, refer to all those lovely little dinghies full of 50 to 60 people at a time coming over and ending up in our country. And the reason they're saying they're solving it is because of this so-called one-in, one-out deal that Starmer has negotiated with the French. Now, there's a couple of problems here. One out, right? One in. Who are they? Where have they come from? And what do they want to do when they get here? Still the same question, and I'm still waiting for the same answer. And also, the number of people out and the number of people in will not keep pace with the number of people that are here already, and won't keep pace with any attempt to try and solve the problem. So really, it's a fool's errand. So what do we do about it? I tend to think, and I tend to appreciate the idea of looking into the past for solutions to current problems, because you have a lot of issues, and what government ministers tend to do is create new rules custom made for those specific issues, and they're just not fit for purpose, and they thereby ignore hundreds of years of historical law and legislation which could deal with things. And what I want to talk to you about today is something that I found called the Aliens Act 1905, entry into the UK. That's aliens, not the little green men type, but those that shouldn't be here. Have a listen to this. The Aliens Act 1905 was the first major UK legislation to introduce immigration controls and registration for non-citizens entering the country. Enacted by the Parliament of the United Kingdom. My God, they got something right. Miracles do happen. It aimed to regulate immigration, particularly targeting Eastern European Jewish immigrants and fleeing pogroms in the Russian Empire, and economic and social tensions in areas like London's East End. We have a bit of a problem in the London area right now, wouldn't you agree? The Act gave the Home Secretary overall responsibility for immigration and nationality matters. Key provisions for entry. So there's provisions for granting entry and provisions for not granting entry. Have a listen to this. Definition of an undesirable immigrant. The Act targeted immigrants deemed undesirable, defined as those who could not demonstrate the ability to support themselves and their dependents, i.e. likely to become a charge upon the rates or public funds, were deemed lunatics, idiots, or had medical conditions likely to make them a public burden. This is the important one. Had been convicted of crimes, not political crimes, that would warrant extradition. These criteria were vaguely worded, allowing significant discretion to immigration officials. Inspection and refusal of entry. This is immigration officers. The Act established immigration officers at designated ports of entry to inspect arriving passengers. Ships carrying more than 20 steerage passengers. Now, the term steerage, you can see where, the kind of area this is from, was subject to inspection. Refusal of entry. Officers could deny entry to those classified as undesirable. Immigrants had to prove they could support themselves or face rejection. Medical grounds. Immigrants could be turned away if medical examinations revealed conditions that might burden public resources. Appeals process. Those denied entry could appeal to an immigration board at the port, but the process was often cursory and decisions rarely overturned. There was a limited exemption for asylum seekers as well. The Act included a provision exemption those fleeing religious or political persecution from being denied entry as undesirable. However, in practice, this exemption was often ignored, and many asylum seekers, particularly Jewish immigrants, faced rejection due to strict interpretations by officials. Deportation powers. The Home Secretary could issue deportation orders for aliens who became a public charge within a year of arrival or were convicted of certain offences. You know, these are the areas of this act which could well be used to quite an effective degree, considering some of the issues we have now. Deportation was also possible for those who slipped through initial entry checks but were later deemed undesirable. Registration and monitoring. Aliens were required to register with authorities upon arrival, providing details like name, occupation, address. This laid the groundwork for later registration systems, i.e. the Alien Restrictions Act of 1914. Shipmasters were obligated to submit lists of alien passengers to port authorities, a practice formalised from earlier aliens acts. Now, when you look further into this, if anybody comes into the country that is deemed undesirable or they're not going to gain entry, the responsibility of removing them then passes back to the method by which they entered the country into the first place. In this context, the shipping company that bought them. But in modern day context, should it be the country that allowed them to leave their coastline in the first place? But moreover, there is provision in there to control and limit the people that come into this country. So then, if they're removed, they should either be removed back to the country from where they came, or failing that, an area away from our country where it can be sorted out. Somewhere like I've mentioned before, St Helena, for example. You know, there's nothing racist, there's nothing nefarious, there's nothing naughty about any of this. This is really using legislation and old laws that are there, that have been there in this case for over 100 years, to deal with the problem at source. But instead, this current crop of politicians, this current government we have, are just creating new legislation on the fly, thinking it's going to put a sticking plaster over a problem, and it carries on regardless. You know, if you remove 50 a week, for example, and take 50 in, there's still thousands here. So it's not solving the problem. And you get all the little lefties online saying, oh, this will shut up Nigel Farage, blah, 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 blah. Of course it won't. The problem will continue. There's this. And I've done research on all sorts of different old laws here, there and everywhere to see what solutions there are in the past to current day problems. And they're there, staring us right in the face. And the British government, time and again, have failed the people they're elected to represent. Scary stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Share this around because it's important education, really. Have a look at this video here. This is an earlier one I did. And as always, I look forward to talking to you again soon. Toodaloo.